Say Steven Spielberg, and we all see a dozen images. A shark, an alien spaceship, Indiana Jones in a snake pit, soldiers landing on the beaches of Normandy. His movies educate and enthrall, boggle and terrify. And now he's directed his 27th film about one of the most admired men in history and one of his heroes, Abraham Lincoln. But before we tell you about that, we discovered things about Spilberg that took us by surprise. Stories from his childhood that are reflected in many of his extraordinary films. Steven Spielberg is now 65. He told us that when he's directing, he still gets just as worried, panicked, filled with dread as he did when he first started out.
The story will continue in a moment.
You're a nervous wreck.
Yeah, it's true.
Is it a fear?
It's not really fear. It's just much more of a of anticipation of the unknown, and the unknown could be food poisoning. It's just kind of a level of anxiety having to do with not being able to write my life as well as I can write my movies.
What about a way to handle your fears?
There's no better way than to tell a story about them and infect everybody else. Although I tell you something, it doesn't get it off your chest. It doesn't.
The fear comes right back again.
Right back again, like it belongs to you. I own my fear.
And you're going to hold on to it, actually. It sounds to me like.
Well, it's commercial, so I don't want to. I don't want to lose it.
He's been scaring us for almost 40 years.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
But he's also touched us.
Come. Stay.
Amazed us. Inspired us. Filled us with wonder. And brought history to life. With such an eclectic repertoire, we wondered if anything tied his movies together. It turns out there is. You have said that all your movies go back to your childhood.
Most of them do.
Spielberg spent his childhood in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, with his 3 sisters, Mom, and Dad.
Anything he wanted, we did.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
never said no.
Arnold Spielberg is now 95, and Leah is 92.
Steve really did run us. He called the shots.
Leah was a full-time mom who Steven says was his co-conspirator.
My mom didn't parent us as much as she sort of big-sistered us. She was Peter Pan. She refused to grow up.
Arnold was a computer engineer.
I missed my dad a lot growing up, even though we were together as a family. My dad was really a workaholic, and he was always working.
They were not close.
I
You were always so involved. He
was busy at work.
Steven had trouble fitting in. He wasn't a good student and wasn't good at sports. He was bullied.
I was a nerd in those days. Outsider, like the kid that played the clarinet in the band and orchestra, which I did.
We lived in an all non-Jewish neighborhood. These people used to chant, "The Spielbergs are dirty Jews." And one night, Steve climbed out of his bedroom window and peanut buttered their windows, which I thought was marvelous.
Do you remember what you did?
It took Skippy peanut butter and smeared it all over their windows.
Yeah.
Did she say that to you?
Yes, she did.
She told you that?
She told us that.
Okay. I guess right now we're beyond the statute of limitations, so I can't get sued for vandalism.
But you came under some serious anti-Semitic attacks. How did you react? How did you deal with it?
I denied it for a long time.
Denied what? That
My
you were
Judaism.
Jewish? Oh. Were you ashamed?
Mm-hmm. I often told people my last name was German, not Jewish. I'm sure my grandparents are rolling over in their graves right now hearing me say that, but I think that, that I was in denial for a long time.
So when people say that a lot of your movies are about outsiders, that's what you must have felt.
Oh, yeah. I was an outsider for most of my formative years.
What saved him was a camera he got from his dad.
Howard, get away from there!
When he was 16, he made his first talkie called Firelight, a science fiction thriller he produced, directed, wrote, edited, and showed at the local movie theater. You obviously got a lot of approval for these early films. You got a lot of attention. Was that what motivated you to go on with it? Was that, oh my God, I'm finally being accepted?
Well, I had found a way to accept myself in my own life by making movies. I found that I could do something well.
And he kept on doing it with a TV movie, now a cult thriller called Duel, about a menacing truck. By 22, he was the youngest director ever signed to a long-term Hollywood contract. And soon he was churning out hits, like one of his biggest hits, E.T. It was based on his parents' divorce when he was 19.
E.T. began with me trying to write a story about my parents' divorce.
That was your family.
Mm-hmm.
That was your mother.
Mm-hmm.
She's quite upset that the father has left.
Sure.
As if he walked out on her.
Maybe you ought to call your father and tell him about it.
I can't. He's in Mexico with Sally. Where's Mexico?
This was your sense of it. So you blamed your father.
I did pin it on him.
But that wasn't what really happened.
Well, she fell in love with another guy.
Yes, with one of his friends.
You fell in love with one of his friends. Did Stephen know that?
No, he didn't know that right away. He thought I divorced her.
So wait a minute. You fell in love with his friend. You left him, but Stephen blamed you, thought
right.
you had left her, and
Yeah.
you didn't tell him?
That's right. Not for years.
Why?
I don't know. I think I was just protecting her because I was in love with her.
Even though she left you, you were still in love with her?
But yeah, still do.
He forgave me, I think. I was so unhappy. He covered for me.
Even after I knew the truth, I blamed my dad.
Oh my goodness.
It's still a mystery to me, but even though my mother was like an older sister to me, I kind of put her up on a pedestal. And my dad was much more terrestrial, much more grounded, much more salt of the earth. And for some reason, it was easier for me to blame him than it was to someone who I was already exalted.
This may explain why the workaholic, absent father is a recurring character in Spielberg's movies,
Jack.
like the businessman in Hook.
Jack, next season I'm coming to 6 games, I promise. My word is my bond.
Yeah, junk bond.
When he blamed me, it came right out in the movies.
You were the bad guy.
Not so much a bad guy as an absent guy.
That's the way he saw it.
Probably expressed his need for more attention than I gave him.
You stayed kind of angry at your dad for
I did, for too long, for many, many, many wasted years.
15 years.
15 years. It was bigger than I was, and I wasn't able really to come through it for a long, long time.
It was Stephen's wife, actress Kate Capshaw, who encouraged him to make peace with his father.
My dad and I had an amazing reconciliation, which is going on almost 18 years, where we have really, really been in each other's lives. And those feelings that I expressed earlier, I no longer feel today.
I see this. You tell me if I've got it right. When you were angry at him, you made a lot of movies about fathers who abandoned their kids and left their kids, and the fathers are bad guys. And all of a sudden, there's a change. And the fathers start becoming the heroes.
Exactly.
War of the Worlds, for instance, starts out with Tom Cruise as an impatient, inattentive father.
You're an hole. Hate coming here. Why you act like such a
After he courageously saves his children from an alien invasion, the movie ends up with an emotional father-son reconciliation. Even Schindler's List, about the Holocaust, grew out of a decision by Spielberg to face down the anti-Semitism he grew up with in Phoenix. You never expected people to go see it, I heard.
No, I didn't. That's why I shot it in black and white. I did everything I needed to do to tell the story the way I thought the story should be told, to give it as much integrity as I could, never expecting it to make $1.
Okay, start over him like this. Okay.
But it did, and then some. It made $320 million. Spielberg won his first Oscars for directing and Best Picture, and his career went to a whole new level. And now he's turned his nervous energy into making a movie about Abraham Lincoln, a subject he researched for 12 years, immersing himself in the look, the sounds, the smallest details of life in 1865.
I've always wanted to tell a story about Lincoln. I saw a paternal father figure. I saw someone who was completely, stubbornly committed to his ideals, to his vision.
Mr. James Markinson.
The movie's about how Lincoln gets the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery, passed by Congress. It's a little-known story in the last 4 months of his life. Daniel Day-Lewis is Lincoln.
Abolishing slavery by constitutional provision settles the fate for all coming time, not only of the millions now in bondage, but of unborn millions to come.
There's not a lot of action. There's no Spielberg special effects. It's a movie about process and politics. Have you ever done a movie even remotely?
Never. Like
no,
this?
Not even
Never.
close.
No. I knew I could do the action in my sleep. At this point in my career, in my life, the action doesn't hold any, it doesn't attract me anymore.
With only one brief battle scene, the movie's more like a stage play with lots of dialogue as Lincoln cajoles and horse trades for votes.
Blood's been spilt to afford us this moment now! Now!
Spielberg decided to hold off releasing the movie until after the November election because he didn't want the film to become a tug of war about party politics.
I think the film is very relevant for today. It's about leadership.
And there are certainly lessons about talking with people from the other side.
Right. And about telling the truth, about how you feel.
But what about the brooding, depressed Lincoln?
I think there is a sense of a darkness with him. He was living with two agendas, both of which had to do with healing. It had to do with a solution, first, to abolish slavery, end the war, but he also had his personal life, and I think there's darkness in there.
In his personal life, he was contending with his depressed wife, played by Sally Field.
No one has ever lived who knows better than you.
And this being a Spielberg film, you also see Lincoln struggling to raise his sons. This is definitely a heroic father movie.
He was the father of the nation in need of repair. And in a sense, that movies I've made recently have reflected the positive relationship that my dad and I have enjoyed for 20, 25 years.
How important was that reconciliation for your ability to make a movie like this?
I think one of the worst things that happened to me was, my voluntary fallout with my father. And then the greatest thing that ever happened to me was I finally saw the light and realized that I needed to love him in a way that he could love me back.
Stephen does say that his own creativity seems to still grow out of this household.
Well, we must have left some sort of impression.
I'll say that. Leah married Arnold's friend, who has since died. Arnold and his wife are now close to Leah. The three of you are very close?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't life something?
Yeah,
Yep.
isn't it a hoot?
Isn't it a hoot?
And she's a nice woman.
Go to 60minutesovertime.com to hear more about the movie and Lincoln the Man from the actor who plays him. Sponsored by Lyrica.